Hello dear students. We will be continuing today the soliloquies that I was talking about in Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet. Now we discussed the first two soliloquies. Now we are coming to the third soliloquy in Shakespearean tragedy, Hamlet. Now the third soliloquy occurs in Act 2, Scene 2 of the play, and here there is a kind of a dilemma that is going on in the mind of Hamlet, how to avenge his father's death. And the problem, as I already told you earlier, is not that he doesn't want to. It's not about whether he doesn't wish to or doesn't desire to. The problem is here of too much of procrastination and too much of inactivity. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave I am. The player, shedding tears while reciting a speech descriptive of Hecuba's grief over the death of her husband. Priam stings Hamlet. Hecuba is nothing but the player, and yet the player wept over her fate. If the players might have been on Hamlet's place, he might have drowned the stage with tears. So now this is again kind of an example that is being given here. Thus Hamlet, conscience stirs his body into action, that is, to take revenge. Yet once again he wavers in spite of his passionate outburst of self-condemnation, and he curses himself as a dull and muddy, melted rascal. This is what is meddling and troubling him. Now this soliloquy clearly reveals Hamlet's incapacity for any vigorous kind of action. He will then make some actors enact a play representing something like the murder of his father. He shall closely watch the expressions on his uncle's face, and he shows some signs of flinching. He shall know that he is guilty and then will decide upon the revenge. So he just decided to plan a play and enact a play, and through that play how uncle reacts and how he will work upon his revenge. So this is what happens in the third soliloquy. Now in the fourth soliloquy, which occurs in Act 3, Scene 1, the most renowned and celebrated because it has got a deep philosophy, and of course you already know about it. Here Hamlet finds himself on the horns of dilemma, and of course we have these very famous, well quoted lines: to be or not to be, that is the question. He asks which of the two alternatives is nobler, whether silently to suffer the cruelties of fate or to put up a fight against the misfortunes of life. Death means a kind of sleep. By falling into the slumber of death, we can put an end to our own mental sufferings and to the numerous blows of which every human being is exposed to. So this is again something we need to ponder about. It is a fear of what may happen to us after death makes us endure the ills and the injustice of life, because we don't have enough knowledge of what exactly happens to us after we leave the body. Death doesn't mean that it's an end to our life. Death, in fact, it is a journey to a new life. But when we don't have this knowledge, we are surrounded by fears, we are surrounded by apprehensions, we are surrounded by doubts, and that definitely ruins our mind and our condition of the mind also. But that the dread of something after death, that the undiscovered country from whose brows no traveller returns, puzzles the will. Thus, the enormous task of great height which one had undertaken to accomplish lose their hold, and we are rendered incapable of implementing our objects. Our aims and our purposes are thus foiled. This soliloquy more than ever reveals the speculative temperament of Hamlet, his irresolute and wavering mind, and his incapacity for any premeditated actions. So of course, we can understand that this soliloquy is extremely important because it reveals the speculative mind of Hamlet. Now we will be continuing with the fifth soliloquy in the next class, and I hope you are able to understand it in a much better way. Thank you.